プラズマプロダクションプレゼンツプラズマバースポッドキャスト。
Hey everyone, here's Filippo from Plasma, DP and Colors, and this is our first ever podcast series with creatives and with professionals from the filmmaking world. And this time we have one of, I might say, one of the most exciting hosts that we might have here, Nikolas Moldenhauer from Media Division. I'm following Media Division since, I won't say video one, but for sure one of your first nerdy stuff videos. So Nikolas, how you started the channel, why you started the channel, and how everything happened, and how everything started. What?
I'm first. Yay!
You're first. You are the first. Yeah, the first. Absolutely.
Congratulations to your new web series, and I wish you all the best and luck. Just for altruistic reasons alone, No, how did it start? Everything, actually, I guess, like all of it, it was a how does a mother come to a child situation. I started to get into the EVA 1 back then, and I just for the fun of it did a web group with it on Facebook, and then I thought I'd upload videos with the firmware and everything, and it built from there. And about like a year into that, I started to do things that I was interested in, because talking about a camera is all good and fun and for those who need it, but it doesn't last, and it's nothing interesting, and it's nothing really what I can learn about it. And the whole endeavor, the whole thing for me is I want to learn. And the best way to do it, sometimes when you have a problem or something, you explain something to yourself under the shower. It's basically the same effect for me. We do this to understand it better ourselves. And every problem or every subject we tackle, we are kind of experts after it, but we are not before we went into the subject. So it's for us a big learning curve, and we are welcoming everybody to just take the same approach to it and get along, and we condense it for everybody else. So things that were very hard for us to understand, we knew it, but we didn't really know the core of it. And after a video, we are much cleverer than that, and that's the whole point of it.
Okay, that's great. And you say the really important thing, the fact that you talk and are talking about things that you love and things that you love, talking about.
Definitely.
I saw precisely this thing during one of our latest call. We spent something like 2 hours on the call, and I think that an hour and a half or something like was talking about movies and about things in movies and about the episode, one of your latest episode from the HDR grade that made the Iron Sea. And
we collaborated in that.
Yeah, we collaborated in that.
Thanks a lot for doing that, because I'm just not used to grading HDR. Our hardware is not optimal for it, and so on. And thanks for sharing the vision and give us something in the HDR world which would translate our vision to HDR and of course give your own.
Thanks a lot. It's been an honor. And if you're listening to this podcast in the future, probably the blog article and YouTube video is already out. I'm going to talk a bit about this HDR process, because it wasn't just about processing the HDR image, but it was about interfacing with Nikolas about the YouTube upload. That was the real pain, because I think at the start of 2023, or better at end of 2022, there's been a bit of a pain, telling YouTube that we were uploading HDR, even if the metadata were right, even if everything were right. So,
First of all, there's always a 24 to 48 hour delay until you can actually see what you're doing, because YouTube basically immediately gives you a normal SDR 4K version, but then it takes forever, and you don't really know when, because it doesn't have a clock on it or anything.
Yeah.
Until it delivers the HDR, and then you can start to discuss what you think of it, or maybe give it a bit more black, less black, or whatever. And so it's not how you do it right now. YouTube really has to change something about that workflow for collaborators like us. Yeah.
Yeah, even because I started with the like classic workflow that it's normal maybe for Netflix or all the HDR delivers that normally are using to this. So by working both on both projects, color managed and not color managed inside Resolve, by managing the spaces with the color space transform, by letting DaVinci take care of that, and all the times we have like one upload that was working, the other is not working, and we had a really tight schedule and 48 hours to understand if the delivery were right. So it has been, I think, as a case history, pretty interesting, and I'm gonna talk a lot about that. Not a lot about the grade, obviously, but so much also about the pain that we had with this YouTube issue. So we start with one really important thing. It's about the thing that you love, and I think this is one of the most important key points that I also hit during 2022. Even because when we started our project Plasma, we verticalize and we go straight to what the audience want, and then at some point I said, I would love to talk about a bit more about what I love, what we love, and something triggered. When you do this, it's like people turn their head and look at you, and they're like, I like this, because I don't know, there is some kind of flavor or magic thing between this thing when you actually talk about the things that you love, and also the extra time that you put on, like every episode. I'm pretty sure that you've been mad, putting yourself in Blade Runner scenes and also on Shining, on Alien. So talk me also about that process a bit, if you want to share, not to too technical way if you want, but if you want to share to the audience, what was your process behind this?
First of all, I think cinema had a very, very strong impact on me, maybe more than younger generation, because it basically was the only game in town. If you grow up with big screens and game consoles, maybe you have a different attitude to things. But I grew up in the 70s and 80s. Yes, I'm that old.
Don't sin.
Right. Thanks. But I remember, for example, when I was 10, now I give away my age, Dune, the original Lynch version, came out. And I remember here in Germany, it was rated R, so 16 years old. And my father took me in it anyways, and we watched Dune together. And I was 10, and that movie traumatized me on many levels. And I mean traumatized, not necessarily in a negative way. It did so too, because I remember the thing with a heart.
Oh, God. Yeah.
And as a 10-year-old, you sit there like, but the costumes, everything, the end titles, it just broke my heart in a very positive way. Like, there was a deep longing of me to really create atmospheres like that. Of course, this was just a feeling and not a concrete plan to do anything in that regard, because then I was 10, but it never really left me. And the law for this kind of cinema, and I will throw in Blade Runner and Star Wars, of course, and all this really made this the one to tell stories, and to more than that. I'm actually, when I do things, one thing is to tell a story, and that's very important for our documentaries, and what we're talking about is important. Like in the cinema, the story about whatever happens is important. But for me personally, the atmosphere of the whole thing, the mood of it, is essential to the piece. And I think movies like Blade Runner, like The Shining, or Dune, do have the power that they do possess or not necessarily because of the story, because of the feel, of the mood, of the emotion they create. And that is what cinema is ultimately about, the emotion. And of course, this happens to many of us. And when we talk about subjects, my plan was always to create a mood on its own in the episode, and also to recreate the mood of a certain thing that has a certain relationship to what we're talking about. For example, in using The Shining to explain Zeiss super speeds, because The Shining was shot with Zeiss super speeds, which are originally called the B speeds, just to, if you haven't seen the episode, and so on. Or like in case of the Canon FD K-35 to use aliens to do the same thing. And it's just, for me, it's great to just put yourself in there and to go full cycle. The movie that created you come back to you, and you can tell about the movie in the movie, and it's just, it's a thing of beauty. The process is actually quite simple. I think everybody can do it, but people just don't try, and that's why it seems like at the first moment. Of course, we don't have Mandalorian style things that go around that would really make it perfect, because you really have to understand the human body or a face or so as a reflective thing, like a balloon or something that is slightly reflective, so it will reflect the room around it. Just a shiny thing would. And you don't have that in a green screen environment. So this is why the whole Mandalorian thing works so well. But so virtual production thing, that's why it really works well. But you can get away with a lot because the brain of your audience will fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
So you go in with green screen, but you have to match the lighting of the original scene. Obviously. And like, for example, in Aliens, we have a lot of scenes that are in an Air Force hangar. And of course, you can't do the light. First of all, because I don't have 18K or and
some cherry pickers and whole crew working on it. Yeah,
exactly. But you only have to light yourself and not the whole set piece that they lit in the original. And from that moment on, it's just like, how far is do you have to be away with the light source? How focused is that light source? Or is it a point? Is it how diffuse is it? In what way is it diffused? Where are the shadows going? And what colors are there? And if you replicate that halfway right, your job comes in, and then do the emulation of what the original looked like. And it's not only the film stock, that's one thing, of course, but also very, very important, the grain has to match 100%, but the contrast and everything, and the color timing that was used to change the original film. Grading, like in the idea what you do with grading, of course, didn't even exist in that time.
Yeah.
You have a second pass.
They had just color timers.
Or whatever. It's if you do a color timing, it works on the whole thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work on different parts of the image. So it's very different in that regard.
Yeah.
Still, that's the kind I look for, and it has a bit of the advantage that you don't fall into the trap that everything starts to look similar because everybody's same things to it. Things organically grow into how they look because of the stock, because of the set and how bright the set is, because of the lenses and so on. And there the images, and it's just gorgeous. Yeah. And it's mostly gorgeous because you saw it when you were a kid.
And that feel is like something that you can't replicate in some sort of things. Absolutely.
This is why I poor Danny Villeneuve with his Blade Runner and Dune now. He picks fights he cannot win, no matter how good it is. The audience is just not kids anymore, which they wish they were. Which, for example, that Dune from Lynch is breaking my heart. I saw the new Dune and it was sorry, Danny. It was a bit empty for me. Because it's a good movie. It's not about it. It's a good story originally. It's very well executed. He really knows what he's doing, but he's picked a fight he cannot win. And I mean, come on, Sting, Kelly McLachlan, and boom, and Patrick Stewart. I mean, come on, Jean-Luc Picard is right in there. And you say like, okay, there's no way you can.
In a kind of a different way. In a kind of different way, it was the same thing for me with Rings of Power. Other problems or other things, but at the same time, starting with something that it was like maybe Star Wars for you. Lord of the Rings was the same thing for me because I was young when I saw the theater the first time, the Fellowship of the Ring, and watching that Amazon series. I don't want to talk about the series itself because I will like breaking in many parts for too many things, not in a technical way because it's technically perfect. What can we see about that? But on the other side, in Italy we call it like the grandma soup. il brodo della nonna. So something that
Yeah.
your grandma gives you or cooked for you on like Sundays, and you can't replicate that. You can't replicate that, or you could try, but you can't win that.
This Ratatouille scene where he
the Ratatouille one.
And this reminiscence of the English of him eating the ratatouille that his mom used to do, recreates everything what was important for him about food. Exactly. And this is exactly what we have when we watch something like this old movie, and it's possible. And I'm still striving for that, you know, in certain ways, because just like in Ratatouille, the red makes the ratatouille. It doesn't mean that you can't recreate the feeling today. It's just shouldn't try to replicate it. You should do something that is unique in its own right, and still manages to strike the same side on the guitar, and that sound and that smell, and that will never leave you. And that is what we're striving for. I don't think that we are there at any stretch, but if I'm ever getting to make a feature or a TV show or something like that, I will really strive for this energy in it. Yeah,
that it's surely the factor that makes the real difference. I was talking also with friends the other night about the new upcoming series from I think it's from HBO, the Last of Us. I don't know.
I read about it. Like I was not the computer game, so it's
And about that, I know many people that loved that video game. I also played it. I like it, but it's not on that level. But all the people that watched the first episode tell me that they loved everything that wasn't copied 101 from the video game, because it has that flavor, but it went in a different direction, and it has that flavor. And that was the thing. It was, meant to be different, but at the same time in the same universe, in the same space, with the same flavor. And that's a really, really good thing.
Absolutely, and I don't mind any of that. For example, of course, that's why I even don't mind things like The Lord of the Rings, like the thing. If it's well done, I haven't seen it, so I can't tell the Rings of Power how they're good. But of course, you could expand on a story in a new way, and it's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But funny enough, if you see people doing essays, video essays about the work of Lynch, for example, they usually have these stories of, he's the great equalizer, and it's all about the storytelling. And I always thought that it is totally confusing what he does, and the whole surrealness of it. It was never what I loved about his work. It was okay, but he is the one guy that is able to, when you remember the start of Twin Peaks, for example, there's a bird. It is just a bird. And then there's this factory that saws thing, and the music, boom, boom, boom. And he has you. He has you right there. He breaks your heart. And I have no idea how he does it. I mean, Lynch can create an atmosphere like this, so thick, no, not thick, that you can cut it. And wow, nobody does.
You surely saw the video with Angelo Badalamenti, talking at the camera as he was talking with Lynch, and that Lynch was saying, "Angelo, bring me to a dark forest." And then we saw a girl, and the mood of the old intro went up, and he was like this, playing the piano, and you were really feeling that emotion. I perfectly know what you're saying about this. So it's a thing that you can't.
He's definitely a crazy guy. I never met him. I would love to. I would throw myself to his feet and be like, "I'm not worthy," because he is really one of my 3 heroes. If I have 3 in there, way more, but I have 3, and 2 of them are still alive, but I have to really hurry because they're pretty old. That's David Lynch, and that's Ridley Scott, of course.
The tier lists.
Ridley Scott is surrealist?
Yeah.
Is he?
Oh,
I don't know. Yeah. I think he is. He is in advertising. He came from advertising, just like Fincher, for example, came from advertising, and they have this very concrete vision of things. So they know exactly how to create that vision, what they want. Just like in an ad where everything has to fit into each other, it does. They're very good at being light, very strong visual way to work. Like Scott is Fincher and stuff are very, very visual in their work, and I just love that. And of course, Scott with his earlier work with Blade Runner and Thelma and Louise, which is more storytelling driven. Beautiful, absolutely fantastic.
I'm pretty sure we will have the same vision of this, but what's in your vision the visual impact on the story side, like on a percentage thing, or I don't know, maybe I knew tons of directors that just don't care how the image look, and that kill me, and I can't work with them. So because on my side, I think that it does a lot, maybe something like 70%, and with that I also talk about everything involved with the visual side. So maybe 75%. What's your vision on this?
I'm a very, very visual person, and you can definitely tell because I'm by trade basically a graphic designer. That's my personal history. I didn't start with film. I was in advertising, and then I switched to graphic design. From there I switched to motion graphic design, and from motion graphic design more or less to camera work. So I got a very technical and very graphical history. And I like that the history usually makes the people what they are, Like Scott has been in advertising. For example, Chris Cunningham, you might know him. He did a lot of music video were quite spooky, like Come to Daddy, his work with FX Twin. If you haven't seen that, see that. Yeah. That's just, wow. And he came from makeup. Makeup. And you can totally tell by his story that all his ideas are driven by that, right? Because he always makes weird creatures. I think he worked on Alien on makeup and stuff like that. And so on. And I think everybody of us is basically driven by their profession in that way. Not so much because they're limited to that, because they had their profession because they were interested in that in the first place. They evolved into that. And I'm an extremely visual person. And just like you, when you say like Woody Allen as a DOP would be not interesting for me so much in a project. I would do it, yes, of course. But it wouldn't be that interesting for me because he's not exploring visual things for their own sake. He's more about dialogue and about a story. He can, if you look at movies like Carnage, so everything is in one room and everything is shot perfectly, but it's not about that, And on the other hand, you have a lot of movies that I'm drawn to that are very much about visual ideas. And I love, of course, one of my three, I have two mentioned already, of course, and everybody who knows my channel, my third and my biggest hero of them all is Stanley Kubrick, of course.
Obviously.
But I think that everything he ever did is based on visual ideas and technical ideas that he wanted to do. And that's why he's not only my hero as a visual storyteller, but also because he made that technical ideas the subject of his movies without you realizing. We talked about it before. That's if I would like to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Terribly interesting.
Let's go.
For example, I have no way to know that I didn't know Kubrick. I didn't talk with. I didn't read a book where that said about it. It's just how I think about it, and it with any creative process. And for example, in our episode that we did together and that we haven't talked about as much, it's about f/0.3, which is an aperture that is impossible. No lens can be. The episode explains pretty well why it can't be, but you can work around it. So the whole episode is just based on that idea, how to work around that, and then film something with it that is worth watching, right?
Absolutely.
Not only like, oh, come on, here's a chessboard and you can see that about the field, but to do something that goes to you in an emotional way too.
Yeah.
So I think that the process of Kubrick was a bit the same. For example, I bet to you he was like, I want to, he stood in front of a picture, a painting, and said like, oh, this is the painting with that is in candlelight. Yeah? And I would like to have an image that looks like that in a story, in a visual story, like in cinema. I want that. And I said, how do I do it? I have to actually film with candlelight. I cannot fake this. So how do I film with candlelight? And I asked the NASA for the 7 planar. And the NASA said yes, because he was there, Stanley Kubrick. Why not, you know? And then he found out that that was a wicked idea, because he had to remove the mirror from the camera, that in his case, a prism, the camera where then you could see what you were filmed through a prism. His specific one it was modified to a mirror already, what later cameras would have, because then you wouldn't lose light with a beam splitter. So you put it out, put a mirror in. Now he found out it wouldn't have space for the mirror behind it, because to reach infinity, or even like a portrait, you would have to have something like 4 or 10 millimeter of flange distance between the lens and the gate, where the film is running, or in modern times, the sensor. And so you can't see what you're shooting. Not so good, you know? Well, not so good because you only know the frame, because you can calculate the framing, basically. Or you can put there another camera, so like, if we do the exact same, and you put another camera on and you're there. But you can't pull focus, right? There's no way to focus. And then they had to put a camera on the side and basically then put in the image markings where which distance is. And then if somebody moved to the room, you could actually know at what distance they were. It was crazy. But he said, that's the vision, that's the image that I have, that painting. I want to go there. And the whole movie, like Barry Lyndon, we're talking about the movie Barry Lyndon, of course, that and had an Oscar for cinematography. At
minimum.
Right. I think he wasn't interested in that movie storytelling-wise whatsoever. Later, maybe a bit, you know. But the whole point about that movie was to create a story around, I want to shoot with candlelight. And the candle and the story itself is almost secondary to the visual idea.
Yeah.
And that is something, just like him, I would be drawn to that. And of course, our underwater scene of a man going into a lake is secondary to wanting to shoot with an impossible depth of field, which we actually did. Huh? Yeah. And just like him, you know, like you arrive at something that is a good payoff, because people haven't seen it in that way. It's not so much that nobody ever did like a shallow depth of field that is equivalent to much faster lenses than possible. It's an old technique. We say it in the video too. There's many ways to do it, and there's different approaches to it. But nobody ever has really spent time filming something with it where you say like, now that is interesting, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and that's where we wanted to arrive at, and I'm pretty sure that we, in the barriers of what in the room where we can do it budget-wise, and so that we did something interesting. And for example, we had the chance to shoot this underwater because the subject was underwater, not the camera, because we shot in a pool that we darkened and just had basically a spot where we can shoot in the dark pool. And why did we do that? We talked about that already, because we have this Caravaggio, you know, and using Italian, of course, maybe to the other people, we have to explain it a bit. Caravaggio was a painter of the Baroque, and he made images that was all about perspective. It was like, and it was new in that time, kind of to give images that depth by perspective, and not what has been done in the Renaissance a lot by just perspective. Oh, there's a house and there's the point perspective, and so that was an old idea of the Renaissance. But to use bodies in that way, and to use very cross lighting, like side lighting, where you say like shadow, light.
Yeah.
We love to use body to do that, because bodies are so small in the larger picture that you usually don't have large perspective effects. Like when we look at us now, there's not a perspective effect, but when you do this, well, that's a hell of a effect. And there we go. And I wanted to do exactly that. Use the depth of a body to explain, because everybody would explain, do something like stand under the bridge, because you can really see how the bridge is blurring out in the back. Well, we've seen it a million times. Why?
Yeah.
Show that a body itself can be architecture in that way. I thought that was a way to do, and to float, right? Exactly that quality that the body will produce more depth. And Caravaggio did it in one of his buildings with angels floating around, and they said like that's it. How can I get it? I have to make them underwater. How do I get them underwater? and so on and so on. And you arrive somewhere, and it's just the process that is just.
And it was the love behind the process that bring you there, because you loved doing every step of that. And also the fact that you mentioned also the overall world of paintings. I want to open this door to everyone that doesn't know that, paintings are HDR, because, you don't have, black spots or totally black, parts of the image. You also, you always have details. And that's the great thing about, watching a paint on a museum closer and just looking at all the details that you can find on the dark areas. And the great thing about the Iron Sea and grading it for me was that we have all those pull shots, but not just the pull shot, like all those shots that as this tri-dimension, on the brighter part and the darker part. And the first thing that we talk about the HDR version was letting people see the details in the blacks, not that much, cranking up the whites and having the first time HDR effect, all the TV.
Make it like colorful that
bright,
it
yeah.
Of course, you want to have a tech demo where you show what it can do with colors and what it can do with light and with brightness. But this is all about the nuance of darkness.
Right? Yeah. There is also a really great interview. Dado Valentic, it's a colorist from LA, that I think he created the first show ever that went. It wasn't obviously online. It was Marco Polo, maybe for History Channel. I don't remember. I don't want to say anything. I don't know, but he said that when they graded, they came up with the final result, and everything was like super blown up, super saturated, and they were like, okay, everything is exciting here. We got HDR, but we have to take a step back. And I think that's the problem with everyone right now coming up with HDR. We can bring that to 1,000 nits. We can bring those values up. Let's push everything to the limits. That wasn't the point. Even because mentioning the Iron Sea, the brightness part, I guess the spots in his face on, brightest area underneath are on something about 600, 700 nits. So we never, reach that limit, HDR limit, because we don't want.
You would be underwater.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You're at let's say he's at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 meter depth through the story, descending to there, and it's actually a quite dim environment, and the water is not completely transparent.
Yeah.
You couldn't shoot this from 20 meters away, because you would just be it would be disappear into the milkiness of the water.
Yeah.
Because many people, if you're a scuba diver yourself, I think you are, right?
I'm not bad, yeah.
No?
You don't No.
You're living in the sea, don't you?
No, it's our CEO that it's on the sea side. But I don't.
Yeah, you should. It's marvelous.
I should.
You will realize when you go scuba diving that water is usually not that transparent. So
yeah,
your line of sight,
green,
especially in coral reefs and so, is quite low. It's like 10 meters, 50 meters, maybe 20 here. In the Mediterranean, it's much better because it's not corals, and you can have days and areas and times of the year where it's very, very clear. But something like this, you couldn't shoot. You have to be close, so you couldn't shoot this with a tele lens. Just saying, we get the same depth of field with a 300 millimeter on a small sensor by just going way back. It wouldn't work because water is not that transparent. And I love this subtleness of what happens to light in the water. Unfortunately, in the HDR version, you can see the pool a little bit, with totally covered in the SDR version. So with a little bit more budget, a little bit bigger pool, because this pool was tiny, I think we could have easily gotten away with it better in the HDR version. But
I think it works. I think it works. Even, by not being there during the shooting, but not, seeing dark. I actually saw some pictures from the Instagram. You sent me, some behind the scenes, but I haven't saw that much.
The episode, there's a whole
Yeah.
section.
On the episode, guys, you can watch obviously all the behind the scene. But before watching the whole episode, before working on the HDR version, I remember seeing some behind the scene from you, and it wasn't that felt being in a pool, in my opinion, because that you can see the different dark zones on the background, but it wasn't that much harsh or something that doesn't vibe on that direction. So that's the thing. It vibed on the good direction. We also talk about the cast, the greenish cast that was originally on the actor. I removed a bit of it, but I wanted to maintain it a bit, obviously, because you said we are in a lake, so it's obviously we need that.
It happens light when you go underwater. If you're a scuba diver, you totally know that it's not called the big blue for no reason. The ocean is, when you dive, you will realize that very, very quickly, red is absorbed from the light. So you can go 5 meters underwater, and you will already realize that reds start to disappear. Next is the yellows, then comes the greens, and the last that disappears is the blue. But if you are like on 20 meters or something, the world is blue.
Yeah.
And if you want to, it's funny, you can dive over, for example, a coral reef, and everything looks blue and boring, and then you take a light out, shine on it, boom, there's the light. Because all the frequencies that could actually reflect from the corals who have this kind of colors are already filtered out. So when we are going back down, you always have an expectation of something like, depending on the depth you are at, that it gets this greenish, bluish tint. And it would look very weird if you wouldn't maintain that, because you're so used to it. You just put or from movies, put your head underwater, it will change the color information. And of course, we have this storytelling and the mood and everything that gives this kind of this green fairy turquoise, which is just beautiful, because it's subtle too, because color information generally goes down, and you come to it like a little bit of a black and white that is tinted in blue and green tones, and that can be very beautiful. And I think we arrived at something very beautiful.
Yeah, it was kind of a fight with YouTube, and in the end, I've been also proud, seeing all the comments on the episodes, and it's also fine, and I'm really happy about the fact that people liked both version. And about the thing that we talked till now, you graded the HDR version, and by having that feel, that directing feel, that thing that bring you to the final image on the HDR version, in my opinion, it worked best because of that, and at the same time, even because we never had like a grading session together, even because we had like 2 roundabout of like sending files, waiting for you to. So I might say that it worked pretty well for the fact that I actually graded in one day, and then waiting for YouTube for stuff. So I'm really happy about it. And for all the ones that are listening or watching us, please just search Media Division and watch the Iron Sea episode and the Impossible Lens episode. Obviously, the whole episode about the impossible lens is there. And so it was Kubrick that tricked you, to, making...
The whole attitude, and it's not that I was like, oh, this is what Kubrick is and we want to do too. I just found out during the process. Not only there, we have an episode, it's called F0.7, which is basically the predecessor to this episode, to the F0.3 episode, that's the impossible lens. The practically fastest possible lens is a F0.7. The physically fastest possible lens is an F0.5. But nobody ever built an F0.5. So the fastest one are F0.7, which like the Zeiss Planar that was used on the Apollo missions to photograph the dark side of the moon. And that's the same one that Kubrick used for Berlin. And we have an episode about that. And of course, we didn't use that original lens. unfortunately. I did actually call Zeiss and ask them. And because like it's a 4-hour drive from here, from Hamburg, it wouldn't have been that a big deal, but it's in a museum, and they told me about the flange problem. And I thought like, well, that is interesting. So we really explore the whole thing, and we use an X-ray lens. So in the 60s, X-ray machines used film, like a normal camera, but photograph of a luminescent screen where that is activated by radiation hitting through the body. And then you have your X-ray. The thing is, the faster the lens is, the less radiation you have to use to get a usable image. So they built basically the fastest lenses they could at that time to get to the image. And we have a r-biotar from Zeiss. This is this big. It's 100 millimeter. It would cover a 6x7 because back in the days, obviously they used larger format negatives for to get more resolution to see, for example, cancer in bones and stuff like that. And we used that lens on a modern camera. The crux here is exactly like for Stanley Kubrick, was that no camera has a flange of 4 millimeter. None of them. So I think the shortest one of the normal ones is E with 13 or something. And the old PF that most sensors have on them is already thicker than 4 millimeter. So even if you could squeeze the lens into the camera body, which you can't because the mount is not big enough, and the camera is this big in the back. So what we actually had to do, we had to remove the sensor from the camera with cables and everything and stick it on the lens. And to be able to focus, we built like this macro rig where we can still change the distance between the sensor and the lens and not vice versa. So that is quite an interesting project. That is F0.7. You can see it on our channel too. And we explore there and explain why we can't go faster and so on. So this is while we did everything like this and this whole approach, I just understood basically Kubrick's thinking and that he comes from clear visual ideas and sometimes technical ideas. I think that 2001 as a story for him was born because he had the idea of rotating sets, right? That was what he did. Like he saw this drawings from NASA and thought like, I want to do a rotating set. What do I have to do to make a rotating set? Make a science fiction movie, of course. Do we have a good script for us? Oh yeah, there's one. His process, and I just love that about him. I just adore it, you know, because he arrives at interesting stuff, and everybody's like, "Oh, how did he get it?" There it is. How you get there.
Where do you think is the breaking point between all the people that actually, I won't say hate, but tons of people don't like Space Odyssey? You know, that movie, 2001, and what was really, I don't know, in my opinion, it's a breaking point when I'm talking to the piece directors. If you love it or you don't like it.
It can be a very boring movie, especially like it was made at a moment where Kubrick already didn't give a about his work. I think he never ever really did. As long as he made enough money to maintain being able to make films, he didn't really care about the success of them in a populist way. And I don't know if you know, but 2001 wasn't a very successful movie. It's not on initial release. Nobody went there. And later, when after the real moon landing and after like the Summer of Love, 68, 69.
Everyone waked up. Oh, we have a movie about
because it was then marketed again, not with the help of Kubrick, but marketed as a drug movie, right? To see like, you smell it. That's exactly the history of that movie. So I think it stands completely alone. I don't think it's very trippy, you know. I have my own drug history, and I saw it high.
Was there an experience? Oh, no? Well,
I prefer to watch it actually. Not really.
Okay, good to know.
I think it's fantastic. Again, from this technical execution that is for me so stunning about, because let's say you are in the spaceship and everybody's using flat screen type of gear. Like there's the whole computer deck is like many more just all flat screens, and they have iPads. Watch the scenes, the iPad having breakfast, and they're watching like and they're talking like. There's a video chat on there. There's an interface on there. There's a fucking iPad. Sorry,
you can say that. Not a problem for me.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
I mean, he came up with that. Not he personally, but the set designers and the people who work together with, as a vision. This is how it's going to be, and they were completely right. If you look into that spaceship, it looks like a spaceship would look.
Yeah.
Even from today's vision of spaceships, so much later.
Yeah.
Wow! Try that for a change.
Yeah.
And that is just, wow, it's just unbelievable good, you know?
It is.
And I love his sense of fashion in his whole movies, that he incorporates the fashion of his time with futuristic elements like he does in 2001, like he does in Clockwork Orange, and everything just looks stunning. Like this one scene where he pulls out the camera in the milk bar, in the costumes, everything. And this is what, for me, I don't love all Kubrick movies, don't get me wrong. And it's not about feel-good movies. When you say, like, what's the best movie, you have to say, like, what's the technically best movie? Movie, or which one do you like best? If you say, like, what's the best movie for you personally? Which one have you watched the most in your life? It would be completely something different. I
completely
can't
personal.
2001 20 times, I would get mad. I can watch Fight Club 20 times. I can watch my all-time favorite feel-good movies, The Great Race with Tony Curtis and Lemon, 100 times in a row and wouldn't mind. but that's not why Kubrick made movies in the first place. You know, this is not what his movies are about. He doesn't want to make something that is watchable, and his movies can be very painful to watch on certain levels. Like 2001 can be very boring and too in love with the effect, like that lasts forever. But on the other hand, then whatever he did stood the test of time. And I can't think of any other director who is like, I think Jack Nicholson once said, he's the man. From all the directors, he is the man. Basically because he seems to have figured it out. How to make something. I mean, Scorsese made Taxi Driver, of course. And he made modern movies that I think are absolutely beautiful, like Shutter Island, for example. Absolutely amazing movie. He knows how to tell a story. But Shutter Island is already like in the forgotten realm, unfortunately. Was Kubrick's movie,
still there.
All-time classic. He has figured it out. And if I ever figure that out, I don't care if I die in poverty, because he made something important, right?
Yeah, not at the same level, but I think that another one that has his own dimension figured out, I think it's Wes Anderson, but on another level. You know, I think he's one of the I think the first name that came out to me when we think about set design that worked well with cinematography. There is a really strong relationship between set design and cinematography always, but on his movies it's like stressed to the maximum level. But I think that there are kind of it's kind of different obsession. Maybe he just has some kind of disturbs and he wants to see everything squared and aligned up, and it's fine.
I think you're absolutely right with it. I think he has this very strong vision that is his vision, and he does that. You know, while Kubrick did a lot of different visions, maybe not that vision with every movie, Wes Anderson has his one vision that is very consistent throughout his vision. His movies, and I don't blame him for it. It's a great vision. It's a great way of doing it. And my favorite Wes Anderson movie is Grand Budapest Hotel, and it's lovely because my story it's almost this toy land. You know, it's visually and mentally this toy land, and he has this great form of humor that is very subtle in it. I love it, and I think we talked about this once. I had like calls with a guy.
Mm-hmm.
His name's Miguel,
Mm-hmm.
and he is very young dude, half my age or something. And he was actually one of the art directors, or the art director, I don't quite know, on Grand Budapest Hotel.
Oh, wow.
So when you watch Grand Budapest Hotel and you see like the boxes where the cakes are in, or the champagne bottles with a logo on it, or the SS kind of runes on the uniforms, which of course are, even if it's a different country and a different, it's this fascist kind of symbolic things that the Nazis used. So the SS runes that they have and the flags, he designed all of that. And we talked a little bit about this working of Wes Anderson, that is so interesting, this love for detail in that regard, that really helps to create a whole world that in itself becomes believable because it works down to the smallest things. And that is why it's so alive. And that's why you as an audience allow it to become real. Yeah. And I found that very interesting. And what you said, like his whole square, and basically he has to photograph, he's like the anti Caravaggio. He has to light flatten, come from the front, and has to film everything right from 90 degrees from the front. There's something almost autistic about it. It might very well, not that Miguel said that or something, that it might be that he is autistic, at least on some level, that he is drawn to that so extremely, basically doesn't want to go anywhere else. Don't do that. It's just like putting all the things on the right spot, and it has to be on the right spot on your table. Like that.
I'm pretty sure he is like that. It's like, for sure, even when you saw pictures and his suits are like always complementary, with everything complementary, and I'm pretty sure that also his underwear is complementary to the socks and something like that, because it's super.
Yeah, underwear, even things you don't see,
Yeah. Just, he is his movies.
The audience for the actors.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know, but it's completely possible.
Yeah.
Definitely.
At the same time, I see that Scorsese is Italian from tons of things. Also for the behind the scene, that he's always laughing and making jokes with actors. It's always with DiCaprio. There are a few behind the scenes from The Wolf of Wall Street where he's like, I do like that, ha ha ha, and he laughs every time it says something. And in the end, he has this kind of type of narration that it's really, I call it Italian because I can see that it's really on some sort of way it seems really simple, but it works really well. Like a pizza. I don't know, like a pizza, like a really simple Italian meal.
Totally, you're right. That Scorsese is very actor driven. He gives the actor surprise me. Let it go.
Yeah. That's
when
why
I'm
it works.
directing, I'm usually the first thing I say, like I say, biete mir was an, which means like offer me something. And he does it, and I say like, well, okay, offer me something else. And so on and so on. That is actor-driven directing, and that's what Scorsese does. Totally, and it depends on the project, of course. Too. Wolf of Wall Street is complete about improvising. You just had them together and talk for 2 hours, and just blah, 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 blah. Then in the editing room, they went crazy because there was just too much stuff. They couldn't.
Sure.
Of course, I guess there are other movies, like for example, Shutter Island, that is very, very script-driven, where the actor has to take a step back and has to basically say what's in the script, because otherwise you run into continuity problems immediately because the story is so intertwined, So anyway, that Kubrick is the exact opposite to Scorsese in that way, because he's kind of known for his oppressive style towards his actor, and being like, hey, it's that, and for example, to not have an actor act out, but bring the actors to a situation where they actually are in a situation where it's real. For example, everybody knows about the I forgot her name right now, who played the mother in The Shining. He tortured her.
Yeah. calling her.
And
Yeah, he was calling her.
I know, and shot that scene just hundreds of times until she was through with the world. It was like, oh my God, you did that. Do it. And there you go.
You got it.
Scene. That's Kubrick's.
That's it. Torture actors and actors. You have to do this.
That he shot in very, very small teams. You always expect, when you think about a Kubrick film, there was this vast team and set. So what he liked to in The Shining is all about, there's like 4 people in the room, 5 people. There's like makeup, DOP, first AC, him and the actors, and that's it, and of course sound. But just the core team on in a room, because it has this feel of privacy.
Yeah,
and
intimacy.
For example, I always enjoy that most because everything else is just irritating me, and I'm assuming it irritates the actors. And I just love this feeling of intimacy. Like, we have all the time in the world. Give me some,
Yeah.
And try to do something that is important. Like, I never understood movies that are not interesting subjects about not interesting people. When you do something, rule number 1 is do something interesting people, interesting things happening to interesting people, right?
Yeah.
That is, and the second rule is, it has to, people always say, like, our episodes on the channel are like sometimes an hour long, in some cases 2 hours long. And people are always like, if you thought like that, don't watch our stuff. Please don't. Just go and watch TikTok, whatever, I don't care. And I think Kubrick was like 2000, you can't do that in 90 minutes. You could, but no. I do it at my pace, because I think it should be that long. And that's important, because you're the only judge of it. And YouTube and what we do there is the only space where we can do what we agree with. Otherwise, always the customer like, and don't know better. They usually know worth, And this is the one space where I say, no, that is the pace that I want. No, that is the detail of information.
Yeah.
And that is what I want. And this has now become full cycle with, why are we passionate about things? The cool thing about the project YouTube in general is that it allows us to do the things we want. Whenever you go to a cinema in a movie, that is the result of a reiteration of a reiteration of a reiteration of a reiteration of a script that is then cut in the editing room to please some target audience. No, this is not how art works, or visual storytelling. And visual storytelling doesn't have to be art at all. It doesn't. For Blade Runner wasn't made as art. It became art by itself, and it totally is art, but it wasn't made as art. It was made as something entertaining, interesting things about interesting people. And it is as short as it can be, and as long as it should be. And actually the last cut, or the final cut, I don't even know which cut the one that is basically out on UHD is my favorite cut of them all, not the cinematic cut. Because it allows the movie to be as long as it should be.
I personally never watch the cinematic ones if I can. I want to see the old director vision, because it will last long, and it will be his vision. And they cut it because the targeted audience needed to have it, on a smaller portion. So you just need to watch the director cut, the original version that the director has in his own mind, in my opinion. And I always go for that.
You definitely should, with exceptions like Dune, for example. You might know that Lynch hates it. And if I ever meet him, I say, like, you might hate it. It's the greatest thing you ever did. You might not know it. You might not. It's like your prodigal son, Take it back. And it's not because, yes, it should be longer. Yes, you should work more with the story and stuff, and it's all cut out because whatever. I don't care. The atmosphere that you conjured in that movie is one of the best in cinema history.
Yeah.
Hands down. Beating Kubrick, beating Scott, beating Hitchcock, whatever.
What was the other movie? What was the other movie that he hated? The one, True Story, maybe. The one that Disney produced. True Story, Real Story. I don't remember I just remember the Italian. True Story. Let me see. It's one that I think it's from the 80s. Yeah, True Story. From 1999, director David Lynch, and he hates that movie, even if it's really.
I have not even heard of that movie, but that is
I'm gonna send it to you. I'm gonna send it to you. It's like I don't know. I want to talk about that, but it's a comedy, and it's already
Okay.
it already thrills something if we say Lynch and comedy.
Lynch comedy.
Yeah. about last thing about Lynch, you saw Fablemans.
Not yet. No.
Okay, I won't say thing more. You're gonna cry.
saw this
Probably
one
you're gonna cry.
With a cowboy, I saw like a trailer. Or
No, no, no.
something.
You have to see the old movie. We're gonna talk about that. Just write me whenever you will be seeing it. I just went out of the cinema like doing. Oh God, what you did, Spielberg. It's really
That I saw from it where he says like with the cowboy,
yeah.
Okay, think about this one thing. If you see the horizon in the middle, I know. If you see on top, you just see the ground. It's interesting. If you just see the sky. It's interesting. If you see the horizon in the middle,
Shit.
it's fucking boring.
Yeah, it's fucking boring.
I think I don't agree with that at all. Like
Yeah.
like Once Upon a Time in the West, the horizon
Yeah.
is basically also in the middle. It's terrific.
Yeah, they kind of a different vision back in the days. But by the way, I had the same, about the how long the film is and about the story itself. I have the same, talk when all my friends ask me why they should watch like Seven Samurai from Akira Kurosawa. I said I don't know. This is 4 hour longs, but I can watch it like in loop for days because I literally love that movie. I love everything. It's so theatrical. It's so well written because Kurosawa was like obsessed with writing a really good script, and there are tons of interviews when he said that it was like in a room with these two guys writing, passing papers to him, and he was like, "Shit, another one, shit," so something like this, and yeah, it's really good. So it's about the taste. So. By wrapping up the episode, I want to ask you two last questions. The first one is, what do people misunderstand about Meta Division or you the most? What they misunderstand about the channel and what you do? Because
A lot of comments that say like you should do more tests or you should do more gear. You should be more shorter, and they completely don't understand why we do this in the first place.
yeah,
First of all, to do something that I found, I'm not doing something that you find interesting. I'm doing something that I find interesting
Yeah.
because this doesn't make money,
mm-hmm.
right? We have members and everything. We're very proud to have a lot of members that support us, and it gives us a little money. And over time, it stocks up to enable us to realize projects like F0.3, because I mean, we spend like 5,000 euros on the gear alone, all right, to build that, and we're not even mentioning time. Right? I spent 1,000 hours easily on that project.
Yeah.
So no, we don't calculate. This is we do for us. This is, yes, it's a hobby if you want to see so, but it's a good way to waste your time.
No, it's a good way to pass your time if you love them.
I do this for me, and I do that for those who feel like me.
Yeah.
If you come to the channel and think like, I want to see gear, so then I say like, go and watch Potato Jet. I don't know.
Yeah.
Nothing, but it's just not what I want to do. I do gear things here and there. If we need something and there's a manufacturer says like, here, you want to use it on your projects, please go ahead. There it is. You do a little thing about it. So like, oh, sure, why not? There's nothing wrong with that. But it's not where my heart is. I'm not really interested in gear reviews unless it's about maybe a very interesting camera.
There are 1,000 people on YouTube doing them, and also it's what you're doing what you love the most, and that's also in my opinion the key to I want to also call it success because, being a bit successful also on the web, it's, I think, super correlated by being original, being yourself, because it's a really crowded sea, it's a crowded sea, and you need to be yourself to stand out and, talk on your own language.
You're best at what you love. That's the passion thing.
Yeah.
You are best at what you love. The only way to be good at what you're doing is to love what you're doing.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that again is to do it the other way around. If you love something, you do that because it's going to be the only thing you're going to be good at. If you don't like numbers, you cannot be a good bookkeeper.
Absolutely.
And vice versa.
Absolutely.
You better love what you're doing. And I think every advice I ever heard from a successful person in a certain field was that they were completely in love and passionate about what they are doing. And I have to admit, I'm not a theater guy, or I'm not so. If you tell me about dialogues and something, it's all fine. But for me, it's the way to do the surrounding,
Sure.
And not vice versa. It's a vehicle, the story to drive me through a vision, and not the other way around, which is not a bad thing. For example, a lot of movies that are very successful have, like Star Wars, it doesn't matter what Luke says to Han.
Yeah.
He could say it 1,000 different ways. It doesn't really matter. It's the universe. It's the main themes of the story. Come to age, zero to hero, great adventure story. And you could tell this in a bazillion different ways in the same universe, and it would be great.
Absolutely.
So it's not really about dialogue driven or something like that, And by the way, same is true for 2001. There's some great lines in there, but it's replaceable. It's totally replaceable.
Yeah, sure. And also want to ask you, what are 3 movies that you'd recommend to my audience, and why?
To watch.
Yeah, to watch.
If you want to have a good time, watch The Great Race. Lay in bed, especially when you have a cold or something like that, and you have a bit of a fever, just put the thing like that and watch The Great Race, because everything which is good about the world, about movie, about comedy, about heart is in there. It's just this is my all-time favorite personal movie, and not because it's particularly well done or it's a particularly visionary or so. It's just great.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very successful at its own time. There it is again. You never ever make movies for people. Blake Edwards just did what he was thinking. He was like, that's going to be fun. And he did it. And it is. And it's Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis at their absolute best. It's wonderful. So that is the one thing. Now, if we're talking about, I could talk about those movies that are important for me personally, but your audience would have seen those anyways. You should have seen them. You should have seen basically everything that Kubrick ever did. I love especially Fincher because he's one of those who very, very much developed his own kind of telling a story, like Nolan did too later. Fincher much earlier, and he made all these music videos, and you can see foreshadowing his movies in his music videos, which I find absolutely lovely. Did you know that Fincher made the most expensive music video of all time at that time?
No, I didn't.
That is Madonna with, she's Italian. Madonna with Express Yourself. That is David Fincher. It was the most expensive music video of its time. And that is, and if you see it, you'd say like, that's fucking great. He knew what he And by the way, if you want to know how visual storytelling works generally, watch 80s, 90s music videos. Because there was a time where you have this great 3-minute, tell a story in 3 minutes, make it good, make it impactful, interesting things about interesting people, you only have 3 minutes. And you have to catch the audience like this. So basically, you're in the same world that you are in modern times where the attention span is so low. Use that to your advantage, because these people who made these videos, they're very, 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 very good at that. So if you are a filmmaker, watch the old music videos from the 80s and the 90s, and it will teach you a lot about things, how it will translate in a longer form. And David Fincher is a perfect example of how you translate music video to Fight Club is basically a 90 minutes music video.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How the vision works in your head. And same for Ridley Scott. He was great in advertising, how you translate a world of advertising into a whole set piece. So I think you can learn a lot of things about that. So, and for other whole movies, I find your movies, the ones that will touch you, the ones that will change you. And I can't tell you which movie will change you. It's your job to find it.
That's a really great advice. Yeah, and that's a really great advice. So where can listeners can find you online? Obviously, you got a YouTube channel, the Media Division channel.
Just that one. We have a group on Facebook too, which is in relation to the channel, which is Facebook/groups Media Division. You just put in Media Division, you will find it. There's an open thing, which is not very interesting but there's a closed group for everybody who's on the channel and you want to discuss things a bit further and stuff. Of course, we have an Instagram channel it's not even called a channel, sorry. Where you can always check out what we are cooking at the time. And I think we should work again, for sure, after collaborating to your audience. Please watch F0.3. That is one of our coolest, newest things. And I think it's very unique in the way we do it. And if you have an hour to spare on nerding out like crazy, that is going to be for you. Same for F0.7. If you're into lenses, we have a huge amount of cool lens videos, like, for example, the Aliens episode about the Canon FD, or, for example, the Shining video about the contact size and the original size super speeds. Now, we should work again someday for sure, because what I'm really into, one of the projects that I have in my mind, I have lots of projects in my mind, but one of them is really, I love film. I love the old film look. And we hinted at that earlier. For example, a lot of that is the lack of possibilities, that you had to do most of the things in camera and the stock and the lens, and boom, there's your look, right? And a bit of color timing here and there, and then you have maybe some way to develop it differently by leaving the silver out. You know exactly what I'm talking about, bleach black glass and stuff. So you can change images in that way, but it also forces you into a very clear way of visual language. And you don't have the problem that everything kind of looks the same afterwards, because everybody grades in the same way. Now, what I would really love to do is an episode about film, anachronism or something worthy. And I would really play around with it, because I would love to film at least part of that episode, actually with 35mm film, scan that, and basically try to do emulation versus the real thing, and filming same time, exactly the same, maybe with a beam splitter in a digital, and then seeing how close can we get, or do we find, for example, a way to interpret what we talked about throughout this episode. Basically, is there a way to get the feeling without copying it? And this is something that lots of people try in cinema these days, to get a reminiscence of analog film, but still maintaining digital clearness. Let's put that right. Game of Thrones, for example, that lost that. It's shot on Alexa, so it's digital, but they try to maintain it and do experiments with it, like Dune, for example, that was shot digital, but then exposed to film and scanned in. So experiment a lot of that and have a complete coherent story about the history of film, how it really works, what's the difference. For example, does film have resolution? Does it?
Yeah.
Yes, of course it does. You just can't count it.
So,
and how that works. I would love to work together with you on that.
For sure. I'm sure we will, because there are many things to talk about. I had 50 questions here. I asked 2. So just to let you understand, we could talk for decades and hours and hours and hours because, that's what happened when you're passionate about the same things and when you love your work. So that's how it is. But for this first episode, I think that we are on a scale. I guess we will be talking just about 30 to 45 minutes, where almost a hour and 50 minutes. So I think that's good for our first episode, and I'm pretty sure we'll be talking again, maybe on near future projects, on movies or stuff. It's really great to having you here, Nikolas, and thanks a lot for being our first
having me on
the
your
podcast.
Ever, Ryan, like this.
Thanks,
It's
Nikolas.
just because we just work together, right?
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
So thank you again for working with us. Thank you for having me on your first episode ever, and hope to see you on my channel. And Filippo, hope to see you in future projects.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye. Shoot something amazing.
プラズマプロダクションプレゼンツプラズマバースポッドキャスト